This is the Khans of Tarkir card image gallery, and if you're wondering why we're looking at it, well, Wizards of the Coast at the Magic at 30 panel yesterday announced that Khans of Tarkir is coming to Magic Arena. Not the entire block, actually. They actually confirmed via this tweet, which I'll pull up now. It'll only be the Khans of Tarkir set. And I guess the reason for that is because it's a good limited environment. Triple Khans was like one of people's favourite draft formats of all time. The flip side of that, however, is that we're getting all the Khans of Tarkir cards on Arena. And so we're going through to see what's actually relevant. And obviously there's some huge hits on this list here, chief of which I've been going on about forever, Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise, assuming they do not get banned in Pioneer and then also Explorer along the way as we get to December. I say that, I'm recording this now, there's a ban list coming out, I think 4 hours after this is planned to go live. I'm recording it on the Sunday, the ban list comes out tomorrow on the Monday. So maybe they get hit. Reasonably unlikely. I think maybe if they touch anything, they'll touch Fable. So Khans of Tarkir set to bring a bunch of new cards to Arena, and a bunch of really, really important ones for Explorer, which is, if you've had a look around the channel, is my favourite format. So before we get into this, please do like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It supports me, all that. And without any further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to go through the full list of cards. You won't stop very long on all the non-playable stuff, but there's some really nice hits here. None really super exciting. However, Battle Priest, Falconer, and Bonkin, it's worth noting, do give abilities to creatures with +1 counters. Notably, Falconer gives them more flying, which is invasion, which is important for any kind of like hardened scales deck potentially. Keep on moving down. We already have some of these cards in the format, like Defiant Strike and Hostilities of Wrath, but not a very, very good one. Ooh, let's stop for a second on Erase. Exile target enchantment. It's just a super efficient spell. It's an instant as well, where something like Fragmentation is a sorcery. So hey, could be a nice one to pop up in sideboards. None of these super exciting so far. Keep going. Windmate Rock is a cool one. Again, another staple of the standard format, but not great here. Clever Impersonator. We've also just got onto Arena with Explorer Anthology 3. So not a big deal here. And the first of the Delve spells, so Dig Through Time. Dig Through Time is actually the one that sees more play, just because it sees play in Lotus Field and a bunch of other decks, Blue-Black Control. More recently, I've been playing it in Arcfiend Alteration, but 6 blue-blue, look at the top 7 cards, put 2 into your hand, the rest on the library, but it has Delve, so it gets cheaper for each card you exile from your graveyard. So can it even just be blue-blue and exile 6 cards? Look at the top 7, which makes it super, super powerful. It's one of the cards that was like, is it going to get banned in the format? This and Treasure Cruise, which we'll get to later on. At the minute, it has not been banned in Pioneer, and so will be coming to Explorer on Arena. It's one of the big holes to be filled in the format. Super, super powerful card. It goes into a bunch of decks. Stroke, obviously, we have on Arena already. There's other pieces here. Stubborn Denial. A nice one. Blue, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller plays 1. However, if you have Ferocious, so you have a creature with power 4 or greater, that spell gets countered instead, no opportunity to pay. So he's played a few different decks, notably things like Neoform, where you're playing the other Delve creatures, which I guess we'll also see here, and does crop up in a couple of other places as well. You usually play it in like a Soul, because you're in Soul creature like 5/5s. There's a few different spots where Stubborn Denial is really, really good. And there we go, getting towards the end of blue now. Treasure Cruise. Again, like Dig Through Time, it has that Delve ability to make it cheaper by exiling cards from your graveyard, but 7 in the blue, draw 3 cards, and that becomes Ancestral Recall, admittedly at sorcery speed. Blue, draw 3, if you exile 7 cards. Treasure Cruise is sorcery, Dig Through Time, an instant. Both really, really powerful, but Treasure Cruise goes down to 1 mana, Dig Through Time only goes down to 2. Dig lets you look at more cards, but Treasure Cruise gets you more cards to your hand. So hey, generally, better in different decks. We'll keep it moving, we'll keep it moving. Blood Soaked Champion. A cool one for Dredge and also mono black aggro. Black for a 2/1. It can't block, but you can pay 1 in the black if you've attacked this turn to return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. And that triggers Prized Amalgam, all that kind of stuff. And it's just another mono black creature to come back from the graveyard for those like mono black aggro decks. Grim Haruspex is a neat one, but we've got a few different effects like this now. 2 in a black for a 3/2. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, just draw a card. And it has that morph ability as well, which honestly doesn't come up that often. Morphs is a mechanic we don't really have any of on Arena at the minute. It'll be interesting to see how that works with a client. But yeah, neat. Let's skip on through. Murderous Cut is a cool one. Straight up 4 in a black, destroy target creature, but again has that Delve ability to take this down from 4 in a black to just a black if you want to, or anywhere in between. Is a nice one if you're not using your graveyard, which admittedly a lot of the black decks in the format do, whether that be something like Croxer, or again those Delve spells we mentioned. Murderous Cut can find a bit of a home. I'll shout out Sultai Scavenger. It is 5 and a black for a 3/3. Delve, again, to reduce that, and flying. All these, like, 6 mana Delve creatures are really, really powerful with Neoform, which hopefully, if I remembered, I'll put a picture on the screen now. But basically, you can Neoform these 6 drops into a Traxer, which is super, super powerful. The Sultai Scavenger, there's a couple of others. Scavenger is unfortunately the weakest of these, I believe. It's a 3/3, which makes it vulnerable to Lightning Strike and a couple of other pieces of removal that the others aren't. But hey, quick shout out there. Into red now. Ashcloud Phoenix, not really fast enough for the Pioneer Explorer format. Ooh, Crater's Claws is one that very occasionally crops up. Red and X damage target creature or player. Everyone loves a good kind of fireball style effect, but Ferocious, so again, that power 4 or greater creature you have in play, it deals 2 extra damage. It used to be really, really good in these like monsters decks, when you play red and green with like either some dragons or things like Polychronos, and you have this like burn spell that you can just like finish your opponent off with. Obviously, earlier on in the game, just serves as removal. But later on in the game, you might go, okay, cool, Kratos claws you for 6, you're dead. And hey, every now and again, it crops up in Pioneer. Carry on down. Holding out Burst, make 3 goblins, there's some utility there. Monetary Spiff Spear, another reprint, obviously we've got this on Arena already. Sarkhan is really, really cool, turns into a dragon and all that stuff, but not doing a ton on Arena, unfortunately. Okay, into green, and another Delve spell. Here's the thing. Cost reduction mechanics, it turns out, are really, really good. And so a lot of the best spells in this set have Delve. 5 in a green, target creature gets +6/+6. Delve, so it goes down to just a single green mana, and that is a huge buff. Has been amazing in Infect, has been amazing in like a Tarka Red, really good with anything that gives like double strike, trample, that kind of thing. But yeah, often really, really powerful and is a nice one to have in the format. Brief stop at Feed the Clan here is just a way to gain a bunch of life. Again, just gain 5 for 2, or if you've got a creature with power 4 or greater, gain 10 for 2. And so occasionally he's playing as a way to gain life versus aggro if you're playing big creatures yourself. A Hardened Scales reprint, obviously already on Arena, but hey, neat, cool. I wish there was a better thing to do with duplicate rares, but it is what it is. And then we've got Hooting Mandrills here, which is another awesome Delve card. 5 in a green for a 4/4 this time, and it has trample built into it, so can get its aggro on as well and beat down. But again, really, really important for the Neoform deck in Pioneer and soon to be Explorer. One of my favourite cards, and one of the kind of undervalued, underrespected cards in the set, is See the Unwritten. 4 green, reveal the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. The rest go into your graveyard. So 8 cards, find a creature, any creature, put it onto the battlefield. Ferocious, so if you control the creature with power 4 or greater, again, you may put 2 creatures onto the battlefield, and that's where things get really, really spicy. Just as an example, for example, you could put like a Wildspire Worm and Xenagos, but there are a bunch of pretty awesome options, and the fact that the cards go into your graveyard as well is super powerful. Abzan Ascendancy, as we get into multicolored cards, so Khans, if you're not familiar, is a multicolored set kind of built around these like 3 color wedges, and so there are Ascendancies and then also charms for each of these. Abzan Ascendancy is actually quite a cool one, ETB counter on each creature you control, but whenever a non-token creature you control dies, it makes a spirit token. And so it can be a cool one for those like kind of like sacrifice style decks. The charms are a really cool addition to the format, but don't see a ton of play in the Pioneer at the moment. Abzan Charm, exile target creature with power 3 or greater, you draw 2 cards and lose 2 life, or distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures. All 3 pretty solid modes. You can draw cards there, it's got solid removal against bigger creatures, or you can buff your team. Then Anathema the Foremost, the card that's kind of missing for the format. White, black, green for a 4/4. Whenever it attacks, you put a counter on another target tapped creature you control. Pretty neat, can get aggressive if you want to. And again, there's that human creature type, which is nice, and soldiers is also relevant. If a creature card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And this is a really, really nice effect to have access to, whether that be something like Sacrifice or a bunch of other decks, you're kind of nerfing your opponent's, like any kind of dies trigger. Carrying on down, a Crackling Doom, red, white, and black. 2 damage each opponent, and then they sacrifice the creature with the greatest power. Again, does occasionally crop up in Pioneer, but not very often. Now, Deflecting Palm is a really nice sideboard card, especially versus kind of aggro decks. Red and white, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to the source's controller. Very cool, very cool. Notably, Deflecting Palm is the thing dealing the damage. Sees actually, I think, more play nowadays in Modern than it does in Pioneer, but still a nice card to have around. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Jeskai Ascendancy. One of my favourite cards. I've played a ton of different Jeskai Ascendancy combo decks. We're actually still missing Retraction Helix from Born of the Gods, which we also need for Rona combo, but still some cool stuff to be done with Jeskai Ascendancy. If you're not familiar, blue, red, white enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 to the end of the turn, and then you also get to untap them. So really powerful mana creatures can kind of untap your mana creatures as well. One of the awesome things is that if you've got a way to keep casting cantrips, you get the mana from the mana creatures, you pay like blue for a Consider or an Opt, you get to untap it and trigger the Jeskai Ascendancy, those creatures grow, and you get to go again. While you're doing that, though, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card, and if you do, discard a card. So you get to loot away every time you do it as well, which is really, really powerful. Very cool card. Often see the play with kind of tokens, that kind of thing as well. We'll see what comes up in Explorer for it. I'll also cover all the charms. So Jeskai Charm, 3 modes, like all the others. Put target creature on top of its owner's library. 4 damage to target opponent, or creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain life on the 10 of turn. Fairly versatile, but all kind of fairly aggressive things. Maybe we get some kind of cool Jeskai burn deck, or there are some other aggressive options for it. Mantis Rider is a really cool one for humans. Again, Jeskai colors, blue, red, white for a 3/3, flying, vigilance, haste. A really nice set of abilities and excellent with cards like Thalia's Lieutenant, all that kind of thing. We've not really seen too much in Pioneer, but there is like a 4-color or 5-color humans deck floating about, and Mantis Rider does fit at home there. Mardi Charm, red, white, black, 4 damage to creature, or put 2 1/1 warrior tokens with first strike into play, or target opponent reveals his or her hand, you choose a non-creature, non-gathering card from it, and they discard it. That kind of duress effect can be really, really useful, especially at instant speed, so you can do it on your opponent's draw step. The tokens, you can ambush things, they gain first right turn a turn, which lets you kind of like eat some stuff in combat, and obviously the removal spell, 4 damage to that creature. It's alright, it's alright. Absolutely tons of multicolored cards here. Ooh, Siege Rhino we already have in the format, but we'll swap by the DC real quick. 1 black, green, blue, so 1 and Sultai colors. 3/3, when into the battlefield or attacks, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard, and then whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put a 2/2 zombie creature token onto the battlefield. An engine to self-mill, but then also making some zombies and getting some value. It's a card that hasn't really seen a ton of Pioneer play. I think I've seen it in a list or 2, but it's a kind of cool build-around card that might be on the fringe of the format. Sorin Solemn Visitor is a better Planeswalker in a lot of ways than Sarkhan. 2 white-black, comes in on 4 loyalty. Until your next turn, creatures you control get +1/+0 and lifelink, put +1. Decent. -2, put a 2/2 black vampire token with flying onto the battlefield, and then -6, you get an emblem with at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep that player sacrifices a creature. It is a really cool Planeswalker. If you're doing aggressive stuff with tokens, the +1/+0 and lifelink is actually really, really solid. However, it's been a bit outclassed in other words. Like, for example, the new Sorin obviously makes 2/3 vampires with lifelink. Hey, it depends what you're doing. Occasionally, Sorin Solemn Visitor might be the one for you, and obviously that emblem to kind of make your opponent sacrifice a creature each upkeep is super powerful. Sultai Charm will stop by. Black, green, and blue for one of the following. Destroy target monocolored creature. Okay, solid. Destroy target artifact enchantment. Nice, that naturalize effect. Or draw 2, then discard a card. Actually, all very solid modes that are pretty useful in the format too. We haven't really seen tons of bug, like black, green, blue, or Sultai like control type stuff. Maybe it's time. Maybe with a few more tools, we see some stuff start to creep in. It's not made a huge splash in Pioneer, but it's a really cool one to have around. Team Charm, we will touch on green, blue, and red. Again, we'll go through all the charms. They're all multimodal, which makes them, like, you know, pretty cool, pretty useful, and nice things to have in the format. So, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and then it fights something. Counter target spell unless its opponent plays, unless its controller pays 3. Or creatures with power 3 or less can't block. It is one of the least powerful ones, but hey, the ability to have fight or counter anything, or hey, that can't block ability could be really, really useful versus something like green. Quick shout out to our end. It's been a bit outclassed at this point. We just keep getting better removal spells printed in Magic, but 2 white, black, extra target, non-land permanent. You know, nothing to really scoff at, just a bit expensive nowadays. Villainous Wealth is a really, really sweet build around. Black, green, blue, X. Target opponent exiles the top X cards of his or her library. You may cast any number of non-land cards with converted mana cost X or less from among them without paying their mana costs. Really, really cool. Has also been like a win condition and a bit of like a cool sideboard card for the Lotus Field deck, which is quite notable. It's a really, really sweet one. You want to ramp and put a bunch of money into it, but obviously, depending on the matchup, could be good, could be bad, depending on what your opponent's giving you there. Carrying on into Artifacts. Altar of the Brood is a really weird one, and I think that's why we should just stop by real quick. So it's a 1-mana artifact. It's whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Pretty innocuous by itself, but can be really cool in combination with some other stuff. We'll have to see what shapes up. It's one to keep an eye on as like more cards get printed as well. Ghostfire Blade, the 1-mana plus 2 and then plus 2/2, equips 2 colorless creatures for 1. Used to be something that saw a bit of play in those like Ensoul type decks, but maybe outclassed nowadays. You have some better options. That takes us into lands, and the thing I want to touch on here very quickly as we kind of come to a close is that the fetches, like Bloodstained Mire, Flitted Strand, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, Polluted Delta, are printed in the set, and so as at the moment it looks like they'll be coming to Historic. Just remember that they are banned in Pioneer, and so will not be legal in Explorer, so don't worry about that. But it would be really interesting to see if they do let them into Historic. One of the reasons they're banned in Pioneer, aside from the like, oh, you get really good mana, is that the amount of shuffling is really, really obnoxious. And fortunately, with Arena, we don't have to worry about that, and so it won't be a big deal in Historic. It does make the mana significantly better, enable some of these like 4-color, 5-color decks to really, really shine, as opposed to just shine a little bit. And so, hey, that's one to keep an eye on. That's about it. And so, I'm really, really so excited, so relieved in a way, that we're getting Khans onto Arena. Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise, if we scroll back up to the blue cards, are major, major gaps in the format. Treasure Cruise alone, like, Phoenix has been really, really suffering, and with Treasure Cruise, we will finally get it kind of to a reasonable power level where it can be competitive in the format. And then Dig Through Time as well will help a ton of different decks. There is a little question about like power level. We'll see what happens. If they don't get banned in Pioneer by December when the set comes out, then awesome, we'll get them on Arena. Touch wood, that is. After Explore Anthology 3, hope was kind of waning a little bit, but here we seem to be back on track. But yeah, it's really, really cool to be getting Khans in. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please do like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'm trying to race to 1,000. It's one of those weird things where subscribers matter up until you have the 1,000 point and then kind of don't. But that 1,000 kind of milestone is really, really important. So it helps me out a ton. I really appreciate it. And yeah, looking forward to Khans, and peace out.